A tool, very simply, is an object designed to help a creature accomplish a task. It augments the user's body to allow them to do more than they are capable of on their own. Try driving a nail into wood with your bare hands, or splitting a log with raw strength alone. Sure, give a person enough time, they could do it, but a tool is designed to make the process easier and faster. They're used in construction, agriculture, maintenance, even causing bodily harm to other people. In that way, a weapon is a tool. All weapons are tools, but not all tools are weapons. Gabriel was born in the year 1776, the year the United States declared its independence from Great Britain. He believed in and longed for the liberty and justice for all that, on paper, defined the country he lived in. That liberty, though, did not apply to him and people who looked like him. Gabriel was an enslaved man working in Virginia as a blacksmith on the Brookfield plantation. But Gabriel was intelligent, literate, trained in metalwork and blacksmithing, and patient. And he had a plan. The year was 1800. Enslaved tobacco cutters in Brookfield needed their scythes sharpened. They brought their scythes to the plantation blacksmiths, Gabriel and his family among them. Rather than go through the motions and sharpen the tools for ongoing slave labor, they worked together with a network of other blacksmiths to repurpose the blades. With some metalwork, 2 cutlass swords could be made from 1 scythe blade. These would be a means to arm a revolt that would liberate not just the plantation, but the state of Virginia through a targeted assault on the state capital. From a tool of agriculture and slave labor, Gabriel and his allies forged tools of liberation, tools to make life better for both the individual and the collective. Everyone's effort in this plan shows us something much deeper about tools. How a moment of desperation, a need to live, a drive for freedom can and will make us see tools in a different light. A tool is defined 3 ways: why it was made, how it's changed, and its legacy in our history. Consider the hammer. Some 3.3 million years ago, our ancestors used triangle-shaped stones in order to break and shape items by holding the triangular stone and pounding the target. For millions of years, it was that simple. Take special rock, hit other rock, make things from other rock, like fire starters or hunting gear. It wasn't until some 30,000 years ago that those ancestors tied the stones to handles. The handle was designed to both absorb impact and increase control, reducing fatigue from repeated strikes. With the rise of metallurgy, the hammer structure improved. The head was welded to the handle rather than tied to it with leather or sinew. Different hammers were designed with different features. More focused heads to strike more precisely, alternative materials for a softer impact, or longer handles for power over precision. That singular concept of hitting a thing to change the thing gave way to variations of the hammer for a variety of needs. A sledgehammer to demolish, a geologist's hammer to study, or a warhammer to circumvent armor. The warhammer was forged throughout the late medieval period from 1300 to 1500, designed to beat down the armor adapted for blades. In practice, the warhammer's flat end could swing down to strike and stun armored enemies. While an opponent was dazed, the warhammer's spiked end could slam through a metal helmet with a force of hundreds of kilograms per square millimeter, the medieval equivalent of a modern rifle bullet. In time, the warhammer faded from the modern arsenal, returning to its craft space varietals and advancing for repairs as machinery evolved. Now, the clawhammer is a staple in any toolkit and any household, and all its iterations have remained steadfast. The Mario Brothers have a good, if not visually dissonant, thing going with it. The hammer is a temporary power-up or a staple in the arsenal, transforming the constructive mallet by the nature of the game into a weapon. Think more broadly. Video game characters move through their story with a wheel, a cross, or an attaché case of various armaments. When all else fails and you're out of ammo, usually the empty gun is still a chunky piece of metal you can whack things with. A crude hammer used to hit an enemy and change it into a dead enemy. And that's fine in a pinch. But other times, your final option is more unconventional. A wrench lying on the ground, the sickles in a farmhouse basement, a crowbar in a high-tech facility under siege. You know, the thing assigned to the one key. They are unconventional, yes, but when you're surrounded by cultists, demons, aliens, Nazis, whatever, it's not how you get the work done nor what you use to get it done, but that the work gets done at all. A tool just makes that process a little easier than before, even if it wasn't designed for this process. So I posit again that a tool is defined 3 ways: what it was made for, how it evolved, and what it stands for in a changing world. Let's see what's lying around. The knife is synonymous with melee weapons. A quick attack in Call of Duty, a hidden blade in Assassin's Creed, or a last resort in Resident Evil. As far back as 1992, BJ Blazkowicz started breaking out of Castle Wolfenstein with nothing more than a pistol and a knife. Guns run on ammunition, but ammunition runs out. The knife, though, the knife doesn't need ammo. It is steadfast, ever sharp, ever reliable in case ammunition can't be found. It is swung from a final defense to a one-hit kill wonder, all depending on the game. It is portable and accessible, often given its own trigger or prompt to brandish. Its prevalence in combat-style games or its use by combat-focused characters draws a stark connection and conclusion. The knife is a weapon. The knife's earliest iteration came about in the Stone Age, as our ancestors learned to shape stones more effectively. Prehistory's knife hardly resembled the device we recognize today. It was little more than a sharp-edged stone, either natural or pounded into shape by a stone hammer. No handle, no edge to speak of. They were jagged, like crooked little saws. But they didn't need to look pretty. They worked. These knives were tools of survival, used to butcher hunted animals, remove their hides, cut plants, or treat wood. They were a tool of convenience and community. When you're preparing for more people than just yourself, it helps to make that increased workload more efficient. These knives were not made to last, though. If they dulled out, they were replaced rather than resharpened. The onset of the Bronze Age brought with it metallurgy. People learned to create bronze from copper and tin, allowing them to make stronger and more durable blades, not to mention attaching them to handles. With those advances, the knife established a framework. A sharp element, held by a handle, used to separate parts of a thing from itself. Pelt from beast, meat from bone, plant from earth, or life from person. With the framework came specialization, and with specialization came its use in conflict. Daggers, specifically, became more common in the Bronze Age. Fast forward to the Iron Age. The new metals made for even stronger, longer-lasting blades, along with specialization in domestic and combative directions. I mean, what is a sword but a knife made longer and more pointed? Take that thought process and just draw a line through history. There's all sorts of changes and adjustments to weaponry as a result. On the other end, though, you have the likes of Roman folding knives and medieval pocket knives. A tool made accessible and standardized for general use and dining needs, predating the fork's use outside of nobility by centuries. Given its penchant for harm, both intentional and accidental, the knife is tarnished by its legacy of death. Innumerable iterations of the knife gave way to serrated edges, ever pointier tips, sharper edges, designing for the function of violence rather than simply function. The knife is both status symbol and threat, used and commissioned by noble families throughout the Renaissance. They were like art, intricate and beautiful, inlaid with jewels and fine metals to be displayed on one's person out on the streets. And hundreds of years later, knives became mass-produced and easily accessible, a staple from the most powerful crime families to the most desperate mugger. In all cases, the knife is an unspoken truth. I have this, and you don't. It's a show of power, whether from high atop a social hierarchy or from the desperate downtrodden trying to get any kind of foothold. But look more closely around your home. Scrutinize everything that has an edge. The knife's legacy is rooted in community, not combat. A pair of scissors? That's just two knives that fold into each other, a cornerstone of school crafts and creations throughout our lives. The scalpel is a tool of precision for the medical system, designed to separate only to bring everything back together again. Daredevil entertainers juggle knives for our entertainment. I have hundreds of blades ready to be slotted into my Henson razor. Most of all is in the kitchen. The chef's knife is the beating heart of every kitchen and every cook, from the budding amateur to the most experimental gourmand. Serrated bread knives, vegetable peelers, heavy cleavers, powerful shears, they are all designed to prepare food. We all gotta eat after all. The knife is a means of community, of sharing with others, sharing a creation, sharing more time together, or sharing a meal together. A knife is designed to separate, but it was made to bring people together. For steel, the best welding temperature is just at the transition from a red to a white head. Scythes were useless for what was to come, so the shape needed to change. Heat made the metal malleable. Metal would make these people free. Would you kindly think about immersive sims for a moment? They are microcosms of a larger space, living and breathing as you consider options aplenty in pursuit of your mission. You could splice your genetic code to shoot lightning. You could hack an entire facility, bend it to your will. You could harness technology and toy alike to maneuver throughout a vast space station. Or, and hear me out, you could run around with a wrench and just whack everything really hard. The wrench is something of a staple for the immersive sim, usually the first weapon a character finds in whatever terrible situation they've stumbled into. The wrench is designed with weight and heft, not precision, but power. With enough planning, foresight, and luck, it'll end a fight before it begins. In the fever pitch of battle, it might save your skin. Wrought iron thuds and rings against bone and metal alike, a warning bell for anything within earshot that you don't need a gun. You have the finest in human engineering at your side. And God help anything that gets in your way if you upgrade the damn thing. You put it in the right hands, put enough momentum behind the swing, and the wrench is a hell of a weapon. Its origins are a bit more subdued than sunken cities and tech-rotten space cruisers. Historians have found wrench-like tools from the 15th century, likely used to adjust pipe clamps and suits of armor. The major onset wasn't for another few centuries, throughout the 18th and 19th century. Adjustable coach wrenches designed to repair wagon wheel nuts of various sizes. Up through the early 20th century, various patents came about from the coach wrench's framework. An adjustable wrench, the monkey wrench, the ratchet wrench, and the pipe wrench, among others. Before a time of standardization and consistency in construction, the tool had to be the malleable one. The wrench laid out a perfect foundation in its early days. How can I tighten or loosen this one component without compromising the whole structure? As years went by and more complex machinery started to be commonplace, the wrench evolved to meet the new landscape. Ratchet wrenches and their satisfying clicks of progress, or a lug wrench tucked into the odd automobile. Their size fluctuates to meet the need. The Allen wrench, small enough to fit into every box of IKEA furniture, up to the plumber's wrench, long and large enough to leverage even the most stubborn of pipe fixtures. It makes sense that you find it where you do in games. Rapture, deep underwater, Talos Station, or the Von Braun, deep in the vacuum of space, places that depend on infrastructure that require maintenance against an unwavering force just outside its walls. From the bottom of the ocean to the depths of space to any hand-me-down toolkit, the wrench is not defined by its combat potential, but by its versatility. A malleable tool against whatever the problem at hand is, no matter what form it takes. The golden rule in forging is to heat the steel as little as possible before it is forged, and to hammer it as much as possible in the process of forging. Gabriel and his allies were trained in this. Reshaping the metal came naturally. They weren't made for this, but they needed to do this nonetheless. In the flooded halls of Rapture, there's a split second where you have to decide what's scarier. The boots of the metal behemoth stomping behind you, or the whirring of its drill moments before it makes a new hole through your anatomy. Grafted to most of the Big Daddy suits around Rapture, the drill is a horrifying apparatus. It's loud, echoing off the metal walls. It shreds through splicer hordes like a blender through jello, and it tears a path of bone and blood from one end of the city all the way to the other. It fits into the drowned dystopia perfectly. A weapon of excess, spectacle, and maximum bloodshed. In theory, the drill serves a simple function: to dig through a material in something of a straight line. Shovels, both in the tool sense and the cupped hand sense, are great for moving raw, loose material like sand, dirt, or pebbles. But against a harder element, like stone, bone, or wood, they falter. Our distant ancestors made do in the way they tended to, boring through a thing by hand with a pointy rock, then attaching that rock to a stick. The big jump, if you can imagine it, was the bow drill, mechanizing a drill's rotation to a bowstring that would spin when the bow was drawn side to side. All the user needed to do was hold the drill in place. Before this, folks were just rubbing the stick with their hands to make the tip bore down. Now, simple as it is, you offload the hardest part on a machine. You can drill further, for longer, and do more with less time. The drill's use in construction came to a head in the medieval period. As the tool evolved, builders started to drill precise holes for dowels and pegs, creating sturdier structures and more intricate frameworks for buildings, like cathedrals. By the Renaissance, engineers began harnessing water wheels to power drills using the perpetual motion of rivers. While the concept was a forerunner to future evolution, its use depended on accessible running water to power it. The trajectory shifted to both how to move the drill and maintain the powered motion. Steam-powered drills in the 1800s were designed to punch through mountains. They were more mobile, but still cumbersome machines, requiring an existing railroad be laid to wheel the machine in by. In the early 1900s, the electric drill made it more accessible and customizable than ever. Various drill bits could be swapped in and out depending on the job, depending on a need for precision or power. The greatest revolution, arguably, was the implementation of portable energy. With replaceable battery packs or gas tanks, the drill could be taken to any site for any job and made accessible to more people than ever. The drill's legacy of use is defined not by the accessibility of the motor, but how it drills. Drill bits have moved from simply being able to bore a hole into finding how best to bore the hole. Different tips work better against different materials. Different sizes work for different application, from construction to medicine to science. Its design has been consistent for years. Imagine the heavy cone drill like the Big Daddy's model. Even though not all drill bits look like this, they have the same general layout. As the drill bit bores into the material, the fluted spiral design chips away smaller short chips from a material, removing those chips from the hole being bored. The spiral mechanism rotates outward, so those pieces are naturally caught and evacuated from the hole while drilling continues. It doesn't matter if you're drilling through wooden beams, craggy rocks, or a singular human tooth. You don't want anything getting in the way of the drill. The drill is designed to bore a hole through material, but its legacy is in spectacle. Something loud, inspiring awe or fear, a show of force and dominance over whatever the hell needs to be drilled, from the foreman's jackhammer to the dentist's precision drill. From solid rock to the crust of the earth to the moon itself, the drill is a conqueror, a show of humanity's power over the essence of the world itself. And yet, it's telling how, in a place like Rapture, run by men like Andrew Ryan, the drill belonged to the lowest caste. Before becoming protectors to the little sisters, Big Daddies were consigned to unprofitable, menial work. Their drills were used to clear the way for city expansion, their rivets to keep Rapture from falling apart. All necessary work to bend nature to the whims of people and to keep nature from swallowing the people who reside within it. Like riggers sent to an isolated metal frame in the middle of the sea, or miners working so far from the light we take for granted, it is some of the most important work that is the most thankless. A tool does have power on its own, but sometimes we let what others say dictate how much power it truly has. The metal was straightened. While still hot, a chisel was hammered down the center, creating two blades from one. A tool is only as good as the hand that holds it. A collective is only as effective as how many hands hold the tool. Even on its own, the sickle looks like a weapon. A curved blade, a pointed tip. Visually, it looks like a thing made for slashing and stabbing, like a more portable shodel. Pick up a couple at your local farmhouse basement, get the timing of the swings down, and you'll be deflecting arcane fireballs and giving clan-alikes new holes in their robes for days to come. It's not a sword, but until you stumble across one of those, a pair of sickles will make a mighty fine pair of weapons. The sickle's place in history was cemented in the Neolithic Revolution. Human cultures transitioned from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to a settlement model, built around farming and agriculture. Rather than tearing and damaging the useful grains from a grown plant, people used sharp rocks to separate the grain from the plant. Not only did this maximize how much food-quality grain could be harvested from the plant, but it left the stalks intact for later use, like in thatching or other projects. For most of its history, the sickle has remained fundamentally unchanged, being used for the same tasks then as it is now. The blade, like other tools before, transitioned from flint to bronze to iron to steel, but its purpose has always been in harvesting and agriculture. The closest thing to a change might be the scythe, as a longer iteration ideal for cutting long grass or reaping plants at the stalk, like rye or tobacco. Even the evolution is a straight line. As agriculture became more industrialized, harvesters and combines took the principles of the sickle and applied it to machinery. Long rows of a field could be cut in a fraction of the time it would take a legion of manual farmers. Same principle, just add gas. The sickle is a simple tool, the same tool then as it is now, used by the same people then as it is now. Perhaps its legacy is not in its use, but in its imagery. Societies and political movements the world over associate the sickle with agriculture and farm labor. It is an image associated with working people, yes, but it's also a manifestation of humanity settling into a new way of life, the first step towards building and maintaining a community. And for a community to thrive, its people must survive, so they must be fed. It is a tool not designed to make a thing easier, but to make a thing possible. Like all tools before, a blade is made more effective when attached to a handle. Each handle was hand-carved by Gabriel. The plan was his, but now he put a piece of himself into each and every tool. Sometimes a weapon shines in its versatility. The crowbar takes the best of both the wrench and the warhammer, molding it into a perfect defense against all manner of interdimensional invaders. The flat side, perfect for sheer smacking force. The curved edge, capable of chiseling a fracture wherever it connects. It's a bit unorthodox, but in the case of unexpected dimensional cascade events and hostile extraterrestrial occupation, you make a weapon out of what's in front of you. Bludgeoning capabilities aside, the crowbar's initial function was as leverage, or a lever. Fit the wedge into a space that human hands can't reach, and use the rest of the lever to lift, pry, or move whatever it is you're trying to effect. In fact, when you think about a lever, you probably think about a stick connected to a machine. Pull the stick, mechanism triggers, something changes. Remove the machinery from the process, and that's how the enslaved built and raised so many structures in ancient Egypt. Leveraging effort on a fulcrum against a resisting load, be that a pyramid stone or a towering statue. The crowbar is just a portable version of the original lever, or a low-tech version of the modern one. Connect the crowbar's wedge to a spot, put effort against the lever, and trigger a change, anything from moving a heavy rock to opening a crate lid. Despite lack of records, we can assume that something resembling our modern crowbar existed as far back as the 1500s. In Romeo and Juliet's original script, Shakespeare has a character search for an iron crow that can be used to leverage against another character's jail cell door. As with many of these tools, industrialization gave us a standard design, useful for extracting nails, prying lids, and acting as general leverage. The crowbar you find in a toolbox or a hardware store is the same one Gordon Freeman picks up in Black Mesa, despite how low-tech it is compared to the facility at large. function needs no upgrades. The crowbar is a small-scale demolitionist's best friend. Floorboard, baseboard, anything held together by nails or glue, the crowbar can make them come apart. But demolition leaves the way open for something new, clearing the runway towards construction. Crowbars are also a means of preservation, a mainstay for firefighters and rescue teams that need to move through compromised structures and help people in need. If the building is coming down, crowbars will get you through a stubborn doorframe. Its legacy is a wide fan of potential, but the crowbar is capable of doing immense good in the most unassuming ways. The sign of a most effective tool. The sharpening comes easy. Dull tools make for inefficient work, after all. But the whetstone doesn't discriminate between blades. It doesn't ask for the purpose of the edge. It only asks how sharp you need it. The stone was made to sharpen, and it did its part. There are few sounds that instill dread like an axe head dragging across stone. The axe is a weapon of finality, a classic for a reason. Sharpen a heavy blade, put it on a stick, get going. It's simple and it works. Wind up, swing, cut, repeat. If you're in the business of liberating parts from bodies, the axe has a resume a few thousand years long. If it's good at something, no need to futz around with the niceties. It's a timeless weapon because its intent is timeless. Despite its modern, sharpened quality, the axe is more in line with the wedge than the blade. With some momentum behind it, the wedge splits wood apart at the impact point, a sharpened edge helping to drive the wedge further than before. Axes date back to prehistory, consistent with other tools. Function without nuance. Ancient stone axes, like hammers, were just handheld axe heads. People would use their own body as the handle, manually swinging and connecting. Its purpose was simple. Use this tool to break down a larger tree, then shape that tree into a usable format. Fuel for a fire or the structure of a shelter. That function has remained throughout history, changing only for refinement. Handheld became handled before the handle was integrated around an axe eye for additional support. Stone gave way to copper, to bronze, to iron, to steel. If one axe blade wasn't enough, the Labrys axe had two for twice the function and 5 times the religious importance. The tomahawk, credited to the Algonquian people, comes from the Powhatan Algonquian word for cutting tool, tomahawk. Unlike most of its contemporaries, the tomahawk balanced general purpose with individuality. It was useful for everyday tasks, but also adorned with decorative and spiritual elements like feathers or medicine bundles, among other things. In a shared community, there was still a celebration of the individual. Axes have proven versatile outside of lumbering capabilities as well. If it can cut a tree, it can cut a man. Vikings used their axes for lumbering and construction needs, but in a pinch, they would take up their tools against invaders and enemies. Of course, as the axe was used more frequently as a weapon, its qualities as a tool started to dictate its use against human biology. Beheading-based executions in the Middle Ages were primarily done via sword, but a botched swing or a dull blade could throw the entire vibe off. Suddenly, a good, efficient public execution turned into screams and children crying and, "Oh god, I didn't know it could make that noise." Axes, designed to split material with the momentum of a swing increasing its driving force, became a more reliable form of execution. Of course, it's still state-sanctioned murder, so, historically not great. On the other hand, as axes were refined for battle and violence, the original iteration leaned towards more general purpose and function. Still the same wedge and momentum principle, but instead of the power of a heavy head and a two-handed swing against a tree, make it lighter for a one-handed chop against branches. That's how we get the hatchet. The hatchet became a more accessible alternative for the everyman. Not quite strong enough to fell a tree, but still enough to chop up firewood and create a temporary camp. The more prominent flathead could serve as an effective hammer in a pinch. While traditional axes have curved handles to aid in the two-handed swing of a single blade, hatchets have straight handles, so users could switch from hammerhead to axehead without compromising comfort or ease of use. The tomahawk served similar general-purpose use, refining its function with the introduction of colonial metallurgy. Some models would feature a prominent hammer pole, others a spike, useful for small-scale excavation and digging. In other instances, they were more ceremonial and symbolic than they were practical. By hollowing out the handle and making the pole a bowl, artisan settlers made smoking pipes out of the tomahawk, used for both diplomacy and general trade. The legacy of the axe is a thing of both fear and respect. Many peoples throughout time have used them as weapons, but only because they were already around for the work their community needed. It might be a poster child for executions, but only because it's been used to fell mightier trees for millennia prior. The symbol of an axe radiates with spirituality and mythology, a representation of balance and protection. But for all its use as a weapon, it is also an emblem of peace. The Iroquois people had a tradition described by settlers as burying the hatchet. After peace agreements, leaders would symbolically remove their tomahawks from the place of discussion, either removing them from a shared table to their person or literally burying them. It was meant as a powerful gesture of both starting and maintaining peace. While a tool can become a weapon, maybe its greatest power is then in becoming a tool again. A tool for building community, literally and figuratively. From the plantation's scythes, nearly 150 cutlass swords were created. The freedom-starved waited for the time they would take up a repurposed edge to go forth and fix the problem with the tools they made out of what they had. How we feel about a thing depends on which end of it we're on. Wielded by a quaint village doctor in rural Spain or a Texas cannibal, it's horrifying. Something to escape, its sputtering and revving a foul omen. But when you're holding on to it, it's an invitation. It sputters, catches, screams, and shakes with an unholy blend of exhaust and combustion. It's a nightmare for anyone at the other end of it, a symphony for anyone handling it. You know what it is, you know what it can do, and you know what you have to do. A chainsaw. Find some meat. Unwieldy, unlikely, an irreplaceable weapon for a horrifying situation. The most horrifying part of the chainsaw, for all that it's a punchline of doom and gore and schlock, is that it was invented initially to be used on people. Back in 1785, doctors John Aitken and James Jeffrey developed a chain handsaw model. Its initial purpose was twofold and led in two different directions for the invention. On the one hand, it served as an alternative for the excision of diseased bones, or amputation. The flexibility the chain design provided, opposed to a static blade like a handsaw or a hacksaw, allowed for more effective and less damaging amputations by nature of the saw teeth being in more perpetual motion. The design was iterated and improved upon in later advancements, both in terms of concept and material cost. On the other hand, it was used for symphysiotomy, a procedure in which pubic cartilage is divided in order to widen the pelvis and ease a vaginal birth. Because nothing says easy like crotch surgery when you're already in labor. The procedure, let alone the tools used for it, was still rife with complications, so this largely stayed in theory rather than practice. The early chainsaw model led to Johann Hein's osteotome, taking the principle of the original tool and standardizing it into a frame. By bracing the osteotome against a patient, surgeons could use the force of their own body and the crank-powered continuous motion of the chain's teeth to more cleanly cut bone. Once the tool had a foothold in medicine, an inventor, Samuel Benz, looked at the osteotome and thought, what if bigger, not smaller? And what if cut wood, not bone? The original concept was unchanged. Perpetual motion of jagged teeth designed to cut through material. Now the target material was different. Instead of people and bones, it became trees and lumber. As the device moved out of operating rooms and into forests, the perpetual motion needed more oomph behind it, what with trees being thicker and tougher than the average human arm or leg. By offloading the labor of motion to a machine instead of a hand-powered crank, the user can concentrate on steadying and moving the device through the target. To meet the need, gasoline-powered and electric chainsaws came about in the early 1900s. The drawback was in accommodating the energy supply. These models, while portable, tended to be long and cumbersome, requiring 2 people to use it at a time. And they could only drop vertically through trees already felled, not horizontally through a tree that needs felling. But as is the case with all our tools, time made the chainsaw more manageable. Smaller engines and mechanical components made the machine more portable, while advanced carburetors allowed for different operating orientations, both vertical and horizontal. Other iterations used diamond grit cutting technology that could carve through stone, concrete, and brick. Hydraulic-powered units can be used underwater by divers. The lumber industry, while currently overclocked to nature's detriment, has spurred forward by our desire to build and create, and is buoyed by its modern tool of choice. Propelled into the spotlight in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, other horror films picked up on the trope, then video games, and the chainsaw became a venerated object of power. In the hands of your foes, it was something to avoid and run from. If you were lucky enough to pick one up, then the world was your oyster, ready to be shucked with a rev of the engine. In a way, the chainsaw's legacy is a full circle. It started as a means to cut through human flesh and bone, and has since become synonymous with cutting through flesh and bone. From doing no harm to ripping and tearing, the chainsaw is a means to an end. The only thing that changes is what's at the other end, and if you hope for them to survive their encounter with the tool as designed. It was their hands that held the scythes, that wiped their sweat, that reforged these instruments of bondage into tools of liberation. It was their hands that would hold the blades that would demand their freedom in the only language that evil men understood. It was through tools that the enslaved would dismantle the master's house. When all else fails, the fist is enough in its own right. Ball up your hand, clamp your thumb, swing, connect, repeat. You want to do some harm, you can do it on your own with enough time. It is the last weapon used in the most desperate circumstances. A body's response to being so alight with rage and terror that the only way to vent it is to lash and thrash at whatever is threatening you, hoping your fear keeps you alive. It is uncivilized and barbaric, and yet it resembles something deep and common amongst so many of us. The fist is a contradiction. The first weapon a human ever used. Unclench the fist for a moment. Hands, as we understand them, are prehensile. To pare down a much longer definition, it means a thing that has evolved and adapted for grasping or holding. Think of certain monkeys' tails, a giraffe's tongue, an elephant's nose, and octopus's tentacles. Our species' prehensility defines our evolution. Our ancestors used their hands and similarly shaped feet to navigate trees and traverse above the more dangerous jungle surface. As they began to stand up into more of a vertical bipedal posture that resembles us some 3.6 million years ago, that freed up their hands for holding and using rudimentary tools. Further, by standing up, they could leverage the trunk of their body to accelerate their hands' motions. Twist around for more velocity in a swing, or pull your arms back and activate your back and chest muscles instead of just your arm alone. It's the difference between holding a rock and hitting it against a surface versus attaching a handle to the rock. You get more momentum, more power, more potential in each swing. The hands also served as rudimentary communicator, expressing start this, stop that imperatives early on. Long before speech evolved, our ancestors used their hands and gestures to point and show things to others. There's a vulture circling over there, let's look for food. These plants are good to eat, let's bring some back. The child went wandering over there, let's keep an eye on them. It's not established sign language out of the gate, but it lays the framework for more complex communication. Fluttering movements to indicate a bird or cradling arms for a baby. It was only after that foundation was laid that they began making noises and sounds, augmenting that visual communication before spoken language laid its roots. From then on, the hands served as the first tool and handle. They performed the task or otherwise held the rock that performed the task. We've covered so much of what went on since. Processes were refined and made better, effectively outsourcing the hands to more well-suited tools. But we've also gone in the other direction, pugilism. The origin of boxing could reach back to 6000 BCE when Egyptians invaded Nubia, witnessed the fist-based combat sport, and co-opted it. They took it back to Egypt where it surged in popularity, spreading out to Greece, Mesopotamia, and Rome. In Rome's era of Colosseum-style entertainment, it was important to protect the means of entertainment. A losing fighter could just die, but a winning fighter was expected to keep fighting. The cestus was designed to brace the wrist and protect the fist and knuckles, but it could be augmented to increase bodily harm from impact, too. Metal studs were inlaid over hard leather, or spikes protruded out from where the knuckles were protected. Boxing and hand-to-hand combat persevered for centuries, but even that gets outsourced to war. Brass knuckles were a concentrated offshoot of the cestus, first introduced in the American Civil War. A simple design to magnify impact, maximize damage, and protect the user's knuckles and finger bones. Unlike the cestus, brass knuckles lack the bracing elements around the wrist, but they depend more on the other person not having a set of their own. They're not made for combat. They're made for destruction, to fracture, break, and bruise. They're made to intimidate. Barring that, they're made for wrecking whoever is at the other end. And it's always a who. The brass knuckle is not a tool. The cestus is not a tool. They are weapons. The hand, despite its use in combat, is a tool. Everything that I've discussed before this is a tool, all connected to our hands. Our hands hold each of them, deciding what to do with these tools every time they're used. The same hands we use to harvest our crops, we swing at others to hurt them. The same hands we use to hug a friend are the same used to harm. The hands we stretch outward in friendship are the same that grip the hilts of weapons that were designed to end lives. The hands that we use to touch, to feel, to be close to one another are the same that program tools of destruction, that arm the keys, that may someday press the buttons that both destroy humanity and destroy our humanity. And still, they are the same ones that pluck the guitar strings, that write the poem, that paint the landscape, that compose the music, that make. Our hands are such disparate things. We've applied the same logic to weapons as we have tools. How can this be easier? Hands picked up heavy rocks, then forged blades, then shot guns, then piloted tanks, then dropped bombs, then programmed drones, and who knows where it'll go from there. How can taking a human life be easier is the guiding question of weaponry, both physically and emotionally. Maybe that's why we got into the business of weapons, because of this perceived need, because maybe we were never meant to watch the life leave someone's body. So we decided to make killing easier, so we wouldn't have to look them in the eye when we did it. Maybe that's our legacy. But I refuse to believe that. Combat defines a moment, but community defines our existence. The imagery of a raised fist has roots in the early 1900s, symbolizing collective power between workers and solidarity with strikes and boycotts. Since then, it has become a symbol for various social causes and unity overall. Communists and anti-fascists began using it as a symbol around 1924. The Black Panther Party used the raised fist as a symbol of ethnic solidarity. Irish Republicans used it in shared opposition to British rule. Feminism, Pride, librarians, all sorts of groups and movements have used the raised fist for noble pursuits, of people coming together, being together, supporting each other in pursuit of shared dignity and equity. Mary Rolfe, a volunteer during the Spanish Civil War, mentioned the symbol in a letter she wrote in 1937.
You see the wrecked buildings where the bombs have fallen, and you see the women and the kids, tattered, ragged, and hungry. But you see, too, that everywhere are people who are fighting for their lives, their country. The raised fist which greets you in salute is not just a gesture. It means life and liberty being fought for, and a greeting of solidarity with the democratic peoples of the world.
There is a hypothesis that suggests the modern human hand has evolved based on combat needs. The fist itself is compact, and when we clench a fist, our fingers are protected. But we use and have used our hands for so much more, both now and throughout history. They are not a bludgeoning weapon, or evolution would have made our bones thicker, denser, stronger. No, our hands are made for intricacy, for tinkering, for people. They are made to create and experiment, to poke and prod and wonder, how can I make this better for me and those who will come later? The human hand can be a weapon. It can be used to symbolize liberation, but it is always with the hope that it won't have to be that thing for long. The hand is a contradiction. An open palm is an invitation for peace and a prelude to violence. A closed fist is both primal anger ready to be unleashed and unifying symbol for the human collective. It is the first weapon ever wielded, and it is the blueprint and prototype of every tool that has ever been. And still, we find new ways to use it, trying to fix a problem that only community can solve. Over 2 centuries ago, the spring had passed and the summer waned. On August 30th, 1800, Gabriel's revolution was crushed before it could launch. Despite all the planning and preparation, it was buried by torrential rains and sabotage. The rebellion never took hold. The would-be tools of liberation, one can imagine, were returned to their original use, and 26 men were hanged for their natural desire to be free and to free others. And still, it shows something much deeper about how we use tools. A moment of desperation, a drive to survive, a need to live, will always make us see these tools in a different light. A tool is defined 3 ways: what it was made for, how it's evolved, and what its place is in a changing world. These tools were made for a purpose. There was a need, and people found a way to meet that need more easily. They are something constructive, something good. They serve a community. They're a means to a positive end, custodians of our comfort. Like an engine is defined by horsepower, these tools are objects of many hands that, by their nature, make work lighter. Not just the individual job, but the nebulous work. They were made by us, for us. They have evolved to meet changing needs and changing worlds. We require both more precision and more power, and our tools have branched out to meet those needs. We seek accessibility in both tool and craft, an invitation for others to make and learn with the tools that allow us to create. They evolved with us. In the case of these myriad games, these characters use these tools not as they were designed to be used, but as they have to use them in order to survive. They are used to beat back a force that threatens their life, their community. These stories show the ways in which, even at our lowest point, we are still defined by our creativity, how we use what we have around us, what we are capable of making, and our ability to improvise and adapt to whatever gets thrown at us or whatever we get thrown into. What I keep thinking about is what it says about the characters who use these tools. The wielders seem familiar with them. It's like they knew these things before they picked them up, like they've used them before. It's comfortable. It's not crops that need harvesting, or a pipe that needs adjusting, or even a supply crate that needs opening, and yet these characters still use these things with ease. They are farmers, or engineers, or soldiers, taking what they know and refocusing it to where it needs to be. They are workers, experts in their craft and their tools. They are members of a collective, forced to resist against a power that threatens them and their collective. Whether that collective is all of humanity, a group of innocent children, or the anti-fascist resistance. We take what we can to push back against what threatens us and our people. That's the tool's place in a changing world. Their legacy is dictated by something bigger than the person who holds it. These things we use to create that are designed to make our lives easier, these foundational parts of our human experience, of course they can be adapted if they need to. Of course, if someone comes up to you, threatens you, your way of life, the people you love, of course you can take these tools and make them weapons. Of course you can. But that's not what they were meant for, some might say. Of course not. but it is rarely a time when things are going as they are meant to that tools must become weapons. It is rarely a time when things are going well for the people who use these tools that they think of them as weapons at all. Each of these games that spotlights a tool like this is connected to a shared thread. Something is wrong, and we need to use whatever we can get our hands on to fix it. They don't have to be repurposed as a weapon in a traditional sense. If a thing is designed to help us make, it can be used to unmake. A wrench can both tighten and loosen. A hammer can both connect and pry apart. Sand in the gears is helpful, but if you bend the gears out of shape entirely, bust up the mechanism, well, now the sand just has more time to fill in the gaps. If a harmful system relies on consistency, control, and efficiency, the best way to fight back is to make it unpredictable, chaotic, and wasteful. These tools were created to make life better for the individual and the collective, to make work easier so that more can be produced for a shared community. In a way, they still can, whether as designed or as improvised, but only if they ever need to be improvised with. A tool without reason to be anything but a tool has no reason to be wielded as anything else. All people ever want is to get back to what really needs doing. Like our ancestors banging rocks against rocks before we tied one to a handle, we want to do more than survive. We want to get to a point where we can make things easier, where we can make things better. These tools are a piece of our identity, tied to our contributions and the way we contribute to others. They aren't weapons, they're a last resort. They're only weapons for that time, for that moment, because they need to be. It's what you can grab under dire circumstances, what you have left when all your ammo is gone, what you need to use to survive, that gives you a chance to survive at all. Tools become weapons only so we can get back to using them as tools, so that we can build things back better than they were before. That is the legacy of tools. That is our legacy.